Many of us have childhood memories of visiting the library. But what if I told you that in some communities, the library comes to you? As book accessibility continues to be an issue that many communities face, the Bethlehem Area Public Library for the last half century has been bringing the library to its patrons in the form of a bookmobile. So why do they do it? Where does it serve? And what's the idea behind all of it? Two of the directors and librarians from Bethlehem Area Public Library are joining us tonight to talk about this project and so much more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Many of us remember as kids visiting the library, but one of the consistent conversation points is whether our kids are still reading and how accessible are books to them. A lot of communities around the country are using this idea of a mobile library, a bookmobile, if you will, to bring the library to communities. But here in the Lehigh Valley region of Pennsylvania, the Bethlehem Area Public Library has been doing this for about half a century. And so we're joined tonight by Josh Berk, director of the Bethlehem Area Public Library, and Mike Henninger, who is the librarian for this bookmobile. Guys, welcome to Face the Issues, first of all. How are you doing?
Thank you. Doing great. Happy to be here. Yeah, thank you.
It's so good to have you here. I want to start our conversation with just the kind of the current state of reading. Now, growing up, I grew up in the Lehigh Valley. I remember visiting different libraries. I grew up in the Lehigh County side, so I remember visiting Bethlehem Area Public Library a few times, but for me it was generally Emmaus Public Library, eventually Lower Macungie Library, Allentown Public Library, and it was always an adventure as a kid, right? Like you start with story time and then you eventually joined book clubs and things. I was super competitive, and so like book clubs for me were like, I had to be so far ahead in the summer reading clubs. Is this still a thing? Is this still, do we see libraries as populous as they were, say, 15, 20 years ago?
I mean, I would say yes, but
Okay.
we're like, I would say libraries are used a little bit differently than maybe they were, but not, but we're still very busy places, especially people raising kids, young families, preschool age, through those school years. It's hard to learn to read off a device. No matter who you are, you still need to really be in, like they call it a print-rich environment, just to be around those. There's nothing better for a kid than to be physically surrounded by books in order to spark their interest, joy, and eventual fluency and mastery of reading.
For me, that I love hearing that. I'm somebody that thinks we are too addicted to our screens.
Yeah.
And I just, there's a sense, right, when you browse a library, like I remember running through, not even before I could read those big books, right. I remember running through and just looking at titles and being like, this interests me or that interests me, which you don't really get to do when you're just scrolling through a Kindle. You said libraries are used differently today in some ways than before. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I think it's become even more important to be like a gathering place. I think we all had an interesting taste of, isolation during COVID. I don't know, interesting is the word, but unpleasant experience with that isolation. And we were already sort of like rethinking libraries as just like the importance of a physical gathering space. Like, sure, you can get the information elsewhere, but you can't get that same sense of connection. And you mentioned story time, and we've started even earlier and earlier. We have like baby story times.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes, that's as much for the parents as it is for the kids, because you just need a place, you need a place to get out and talk to other adults and be, and just a place to be. And we've also really embraced technology since the beginning. I mean, I was just saying earlier, I worked at the Allentown Library. I was there like when they rolled the first internet computers in.
Oh, wow.
I'm like that old, so and it was such a shock, and soon that became totally standard and accepted. And then years later, we added these ebook collections, so you can borrow a book for free from your phone or from your Kindle or whatever. So we've really tried to embrace the technological changes, but still, be that place for books. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. As far as library membership and things go, I mean, it's still hot. I mean, one of the great things about public libraries is you're not paying, right, to get books. And I mean, I love a good bookstore. I love going and reading in the good bookstore, get a cup of coffee. But at the end of the day, there's a growing number of books on my shelves that will never get read and a decreasing amount of money in my bank account. But libraries solve this problem on both ends. Do you still see high membership numbers for libraries?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we sign up, just like hundreds of people every month, thousands of new residents, new card holders every year. All around the country, libraries continue to be. I saw that someone said that there's more libraries in the U.S. than McDonald's. I think is like, believe it or not. So they're in every community, and they're still popular. Like I said, we are going through a time where we're trying to adapt and change,
Sure.
but we're always busy, and we're always trying new things, and we're always
Summer reading club as well is still pretty
Yeah.
crazy. And tying back to
Yeah.
what you said about kind of competitive reading.
I was competitive at everything.
Yeah, that's probably our busiest time is this summer, because as soon as school ends, that's when like the library gets crazy.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That's really, really great to hear that this is still very much a thing. I remember reading, this was before my time, but I remember reading about how a librarian had written to Happy Days back when it was on the air and said, Fonz doesn't have a library card. Can you get Fonz a library card? He does, and all of a sudden, public library memberships just shot way up in America. And so I love that that's still the case, that people are still utilizing their libraries. One of the things that you guys work on is this idea of book accessibility. I want to get to that mobile library in a bit here. But is this a challenge in this region? Is this a challenge in communities? And really anywhere in America where there are certain areas that it's easier to get access to reading than other areas?
Sure, it's one of those things where we live in this age of overabundance of information, yet somehow there's still some of these, they call them book deserts, like you may have heard the term food deserts or something.
Right.
And folks have done a lot of studies that show like how different neighborhoods, depending on all sorts of factors, will have access to bookstores and libraries and number of books in their homes, and other places just don't have it. Wow. And what I always say too is like a library is not just a collection of books, but a library is access to the right book at the right time that you need it. Like you could find you could find books for a dime in the thrift store, but it might not be the book your child is interested in on their reading level at that time, organized appropriately with a professional to help you find it.
Right.
So libraries are really like, they're the right book at the right time piece. That's like more important than just like the access to books, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the librarian piece. Mike, you're a librarian. There's when you go to the bookstore, you have somebody who works at the bookstore. I'm thinking about you walk into a Barnes & Noble, you have somebody there who can help you with sales or find something. But librarians, you're trained in this. There's so much more that you bring to the table. What's the benefit of having a librarian being able to work, let's say with a kid, as opposed to just being in the bookstore? Not to, shun bookstores, but what is the like in your daily job? I know you do the Bookmobile, but as a librarian, what's the benefit of having that with your kid as they read?
I think a lot of it is just being there, being present in that space. The kind of element of discovery we're talking about. I'm seeing things all the time that I didn't know that. There was just the other day there was we have like a local poet. She's kind of the patron saint of the arts, Hilda Doolittle, and there was a book I just happened to see. She actually met with Sigmund Freud, and she wrote a tribute and described her sessions with him and things like that. But to get back on, just being in that space and knowing what we have to offer and like a clerk at a bookstore, they're not really, it's more just the economics of it.
Yes.
And just moving those units, what's popular. I actually had some experience working at, a Barnes & Noble and it's they always said like, if it's not a bestseller, we're gonna have to send away, we're gonna have to special order but it's a very different, so you're just in that space and if somebody's, doing a project on whatever, you immediately have ideas that come to mind and so on.
Yeah, libraries feel more relational than transactional, I think, compared to a bookstore.
Yep.
That's really, really neat about that poet. Local, right? You said she's from the area.
Yeah, Hilda Doolittle, was from about or about over 100 years ago. But yeah, she was like, we have a plaque. Her home was actually right where the library stands in
so
downtown
cool.
Bethlehem. So yeah.
That's so neat. There's so many local treasures in the area. We talked about book accessibility, and Josh, you were talking about just there's certain book deserts where people don't have access to this. What's the downside? I mean, a few years ago we had on the Lehigh Valley Reads group with their push on childhood literacy. But what's the downside if kids aren't growing up around books and they're not growing up reading? I mean, obviously we don't get behind in school, but what have you seen as an impact when children aren't brought into a library early or brought into the idea of reading in the world of books from an early age?
I mean, just from looking at sort of statistics, really to see how, one of the main predictors of how well a kid will do in school is how well they read coming in.
Yeah.
And how well they read, one of the main predictors of that is how much is if they were exposed to a library or a print-rich environment early on. And then, how well you do in school is one of the big predictors of how well you do in life. Yeah. So we always say, like, if you want to set your kid up for success in life, you have to get them into the library early and expose them to books. Reading is essential for every part of school, not just your English class, but it's very hard to be a successful student if you're not a confident and comfortable reader. And we have kids who come into school and they literally may not know how a book works,
Wow.
Like you forget all those things you have to learn, how to open it, how to turn the pages, which way to hold it. And some kids, it's like, they're just really behind. And that's a tough way to start out your educational career.
Yeah, something that we take for granted.
Right.
That's fascinating. And to second that, I also teach at the college, and it's all the classes have English 1 as their prerequisite. But we have students who come in who can't go into English 1, so they have to go into a more remedial bit. And one of the challenges that we hear from college professors all the time is that our students aren't ready to write. They come out of high school not ready to write, but they come into high school not ready to write. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, if they're not reading from an early age, how are they ever going to learn how to write? And so it's not just about learning the art of writing. You have to be able to read and read well. And that begins from the earliest age. So Josh, Mike, thank you for joining us. We're going to cut the break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about the Bookmobile. I want to talk about some of the other book access things that your library has worked on. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Mike, Josh, thank you again for being here, for joining us, for the work that you do. I want to talk about, we left off talking about the problems when kids don't have access to books. And Josh, you talked about this idea that, how well you do in school is indicator of how well you do in life. And how well you do in school is often predicated by how well you read. And one of the things that your library has done since its founding is trying to get more and more access to people in your area. You're the Bethlehem Area Public Library. You don't just serve the city of Bethlehem, you serve the surrounding areas. And obviously people from elsewhere can come and use your library. One of the things that Bethlehem Area Public Library has done and quite a while ago is that you don't just have one campus. You have a South Side branch, you've opened different branches. Was that in part to make it more accessible to people in different areas, and how effective has that been?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the easier it is to get to the library, the more people are gonna get there. So we like to be ideally within walking distance, of some of our residents. Our location in Bethlehem Township is right next to a park and in like a suburban neighborhood, and it's much easier for those folks who live there to come get books than it would be to come downtown. And we try to have a presence in each of the municipalities that we served, and then we send Mike out to hit the rest of them.
So how many non-wheeled branches do you have right now?
Well, that's a trick question because one of them has wheels, but it doesn't move.
Oh.
Because we bought an old bookmobile that no longer runs, and we turned it into a standing mini branch.
Okay.
I know. We're like, what do you call a non-mobile bookmobile? It sounds like a riddle. I don't know. We just call it Books on the Hill. We call it. It's in Fountain Hill.
Okay.
We took an old bookmobile and we turned it into a tiny mini branch.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. And so how many branches total is that?
So then we have the main library Southside, the one in Bethlehem Township, the one in Fountain Hill. In Hanover Township, we have a book vending machine that you can you swipe your library card, and you can check a book out.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So that was the way we kind of approached, added a bit of access there in that township. And So I think I lost track. There's 4, and then there's the Bookmobile.
Yeah.
So.
I love the creativity, and there's so much innovation that goes into it. You said earlier the idea of libraries have to adapt to continue to be relevant, and you guys have done that. I mean, a book vending machine is, I mean, that's just such a brilliant idea. It's innovative, it's adaptive to the needs. One of those things that you've done for the last 50 years is have a bookmobile. Mike, that's your world. You are the Bookmobile Librarian. Talk to us about, first of all, what is the bookmobile? How does it work?
Okay, well, so we pretty much, we run it as sort of a set schedule, so everybody knows, exactly when and where, and it's so it's like 4 days a week. It goes out, and so this is not, and again, not just the city of Bethlehem, but the surrounding municipalities that contract with the library, as Josh alluded to, and yeah, so everybody knows. It's pretty easy to follow. People. In addition to the, I think we have something like 2,000 items on board there.
Oh, wow.
From books, kids, adults, some movies, some audio books, large print, a pretty good variety. In addition to all those holdings, I also, people are able to place, requests for select items, and so a lot of the business is the circulation is that kind of thing, where I'm bringing things out to people, and I should back up a little. It's quite a variety of locations as well. It's neighborhoods, community centers.
Oh, wow.
Some more sort of senior retirement community type settings, schools, elementary schools. So yeah, quite a range, variety, and it's. And as we're talking about accessibility. There's been a lot of regular. There's quite a loyal user base to it over. So I've been doing it almost a decade already, and so some of these. The sheer amount of items that I've, they've got through the service, it literally goes into the thousands.
Oh, wow.
In quite a few cases. So you multiply that out,
yeah.
and that's a down payment on a house. That's easy.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
and
you have your regulars, you said, like people that you will see regularly.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, there's quite. There's people. There will be people who maybe just stop by to, it's kind of a roving book drop as well, just to return items to any of our locations that Josh mentioned, including Easton and Allentown, who we're kind of tied in with as far as circulation. But a lot of them, quite a few regulars. I keep sort of an email contact, two email groups to kind of marshal all that and stay in touch with people.
Oh, that's really cool.
About cancellations, weather-related things, holidays, whatever's going on. And I pretty quickly that got, there's a good like 500 or so people on those.
So there is a book delivery bit here where somebody can order something or check out a book. You can bring it on this mobile library. Is it also something that they can come in on? Like they can walk into it and browse, like as if they walk to your library, your physical location?
Sure. Yeah, ours is like some mobile or bookmobiles are like delivery vans. Ours is like a Winnebago.
Oh, wow.
It's literally a Winnebago body with shelves built into the walls.
Wow.
So you can come on board and browse. Mike does have, like he was saying, a personal connection with a lot of the users, so he'll recommend books to them. So
that's really cool.
That's another piece. Like he'll be like, oh, Jack, you'll like this. People he sees on a regular basis, and
the relationship that we're talking about between your librarian. Yeah.
Exactly. That's important.
Yeah,
and and kids can just come on and browse, and that's important too. To be able to just sometimes you don't know what you want until you see it. So that discovery piece.
Fellow at our Westgate Mall stop, I've got him reading the classics. I think he's way blown past me at this point. So, hi Tom, if you're watching.
You're putting us all to shame.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. The stops are regular, you said, so people know on a certain day of the week they can expect between these hours the bookmobile is going to be there.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And this might be a stupid question, but I when I first heard about you guys, I thought this was like an ice cream truck for adults. So like, does the Bookmobile play music? Is there something like people know it's coming? And
We've talked about that a couple times, but we haven't made it happen yet. We think it should. We were saying it should play like the Reading Rainbow theme song.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That was the song.
Oh my goodness.
I figured I was talking to you about that. But
I mean, that's something like the moment you say that, I'm just playing in my head now. And so I won't sing it. Our viewers would stop watching if I
Hey,
did.
we can get LeVar Burton out for the.
I know.
Hey, Jeopardy got him. So yeah, so we should be able to do this. But one of the funny things I saw on your website is that the Bookmobile has a name. What's the name of the Bookmobile? How did they get that name?
It is commonly known as the Bookie Monster, and this was actually a contest we held actually years ago. This was, I think, right before I started, actually, and a young girl from I believe from Bethlehem Township was the winning entry there, and we just we were kind of hate to part with it. We've
She drew a picture, I think, to go with it.
Oh, really?
We use it on the website.
Oh, that's so great.
Yep.
What a legacy to leave. What a legacy to leave. In terms of accessibility, I mean, you've been doing it for 15 years. You said this has been around for decades. Excuse me. How have you seen this help with accessibility? Are there people who can't come into your library physically that can come because now it's right in their backyard? Have we seen this relationship?
Oh yeah, I get quite a lot of comments in that direction. One thing I also do to make it perhaps even more accessible is I'll often set up like a folding table outside. So there are people that have trouble getting up the stairs inside to browse. So when they can. The way it's set up, you can literally, at certain locations where space allows, just pull up your car, pick up your reserved items, dump your returns into a crate, and so yeah, really, I get a lot of, compliments about the convenience of that. Yeah.
That's really
You
neat.
get people in wheelchairs or on walkers, and also, if you've ever tried to strap a couple children into their car seats, some days you'll do anything not to have to do that. So if the library comes to you and you can save that trip, a lot of times I would say parents are also the ones who really appreciate that aspect. So
that's really neat. What I appreciate about what you guys do is I think a lot of times people think of libraries and they think archaic and they think it's going away because of the internet and because of Kindle and all these things. And what you guys have done is you found a way to use that innovation to actually make reading more accessible. And as we were saying earlier, imperative to success in academics, in the workforce, and in life. And so thank you to you both for joining us. Again, we're gonna cut the break. When I come back, I wanna talk a little bit more about just the library and your roles and why you do what you do. So don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Josh, Mike, thank you again for joining us. We always like to close out getting our guests a little bit better. Josh, let me start with you. Bethlehem Area Public Library has been around for a long time. 5 executive directors, that's been it. You're the 5th. But this has been in your blood for a long time.
I mean, literally, yeah, I grew up there. My father was the director, Josh Berk, from 1974 to 2008. So the vast majority of my life has been either as the son of the director or the director. And my mom was a retired librarian too.
Oh, wow.
She was a college librarian for a long time, mostly at Moravian. But yeah, I grew up in libraries. I grew up around books, and I loved to read since I was a little kid. And to be honest, I didn't know what course. This wasn't charted out clearly in my head from the beginning, but it took some twists and turns. But it ended up being a great place to come home to.
I was say, you said this wasn't always the plan from day one, but is this? At what point did you realize you want to come back and do this?
Well, my baseball career didn't work out. I always wanted to be the second baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies, but that didn't work. And after college, I was really just I did not know what I wanted to do. Yeah. And my dad was like, hey, apply. Actually, at the Allentown Library, I had an opening. And I just was like looking for something, post-college job. Yeah. And then after some time there, I just started to really connect with all the aspects of librarianship as it was becoming in that time and continues to be. I've always been like a book nerd, but I've also been kind of like a technology person, and I also really enjoy working with young people and just doing good for my community. So I was like, I don't need to look any further than staying in libraries.
So, well, we're right next to the Iron Pig Stadium, and so, hey, Iron Pigs, if you're watching this, we got somebody available to play second base for you next year, right?
Call me up.
How about you? Like, I mean, same story, different story.
Yeah, I was somewhat similar. I was not long out of college really when I sort of joined the team, and it just seemed, it was a nice place to be. I think one of the things that was really kind of weighing on me at that time too was. I remember, it was really being stressed around that time. How you're all just going to change jobs like 10 times, and the people in charge always sort of want to make these things sound triumphalistic and great. But I was like, I'm not so sure. It's nice maybe there's something that's to be said for loyalty and serving a community and getting to know the people where you actually live a little bit, and if that's not too old-fashioned and. So it was.
That's really neat, and I think you're right. I think sometimes we're so focused on the external, we forget the relationships that have to be built, which is what you guys do every single day. And so I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank you for the work that you guys do, really making books and reading accessible. We've talked about how important that is, and so just thank you both for what you do and for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Great.
My thanks to Josh and Mike for joining us today. Of course, you can check out the Bethlehem Area Public Library. Just visit their website, bapl.org. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you join us again right back here next week. Until then, my name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.